Before we begin, viewer discretion is strongly advised. The following is for educational and entertainment purposes only. This is the verbatim federal courtroom testimony of the Sean Diddy Combs trial as reported by Inner City Press. In a packed courtroom already rocked by explosive testimonies, Hollywood superstar Leonardo DiCaprio took the stand, and no one expected what came out of his mouth next. Known for blockbuster films and environmental activism, DiCaprio revealed a dark chapter of his life most had never imagined. His voice shook as he described one night, one invitation from Sean Diddy Combs that changed everything he thought he knew about celebrity parties. It wasn't just champagne and cameras. It was something much, much darker. What Leonardo revealed not only stunned the jury, but ignited a media firestorm that forced even the most powerful to finally face the music. What did he see? Why did he stay silent for so long? And what does this mean for the future of Diddy's trial? The silence in the courtroom was suffocating. Cameras weren't allowed inside, but that didn't matter. The world was watching. Reporters lined the courthouse steps, frantically typing on laptops, trying to keep up with the story of the decade. And then came the moment no one saw coming. Leonardo DiCaprio, one of the most celebrated actors alive, entered the room. He wore a dark suit and a noticeably shaken expression, taking slow, deliberate steps as he approached the witness stand. Gasps echoed across the gallery. This wasn't a cameo, this was testimony. The judge asked for quiet. DiCaprio sat, took a breath, and stared directly at Sean Diddy Combs across the room. What followed was not a performance. It was a confession of horror of things he saw at an exclusive party he was once invited to, hosted by Diddy himself. "I've been to a lot of strange parties in Hollywood," he began, his voice steady but distant. "But this was different. This was orchestrated." He described a private mansion, remote and secure, with gated entrances and guests flown in on private jets. DiCaprio admitted he was curious. "I thought it would be glamorous, A-list celebrities, networking, that sort of thing. But what I walked into was something else entirely." The party, according to DiCaprio, started like any other elite gathering. Champagne, security, high-end catering, the works. But as the night progressed, he began noticing things that didn't sit right. He said there were rooms guests weren't allowed to enter, people who looked too young to be drinking, and a distinct tension in the air. "I felt like I had crossed into a place I shouldn't be," he admitted. Then he dropped the bombshell. "There was a back room I wasn't meant to see. The door was cracked. I saw cameras, people lined up, and Diddy was there giving orders. It wasn't a party anymore. It was something darker, something orchestrated." The gallery gasped. Diddy sat motionless, flanked by his legal team. The judge allowed a brief recess as murmurs turned into headlines. DiCaprio's testimony had just shattered the veil that surrounded Diddy's inner circle. And this was only the beginning. After the recess, Leonardo DiCaprio returned to the stand. This time, he looked even more resolute. What he was about to say would place him at the center of one of the most disturbing revelations in the entire case. "When I saw the back room," he said, pausing, "I didn't know if what I was witnessing was illegal, but I knew it wasn't right. The people in there, some of them were nervous, looking at the cameras. They weren't enjoying themselves, they were being watched." He described one girl who couldn't have been older than 20. She was seated on a red velvet couch surrounded by a group of much older men. "I caught her eye for a second," DiCaprio said, "and in that glance she looked terrified." His voice cracked, and the courtroom hung on his every word. "That look never left me." Leo then described how security at the party was strangely aggressive. Guests weren't allowed to wander or ask questions. "You had to stay in the public zones," he continued. "There were security men, some with earpieces, some not, who would politely but firmly redirect you if you tried to explore. But it wasn't just the rooms that were off limits, it was the behavior." DiCaprio said that by midnight he started seeing people disappear for long stretches. Celebrities had recognized suddenly absent and then reappearing looking pale or disoriented. It wasn't just a party, it was like people were being processed. That's the word I kept hearing, processed. The courtroom was frozen in disbelief. Leonardo said he tried to leave early, but was told his driver had been delayed. When he insisted, a man in a black suit pulled him aside and said calmly, "Mr. DiCaprio, we respect you too much for you to walk out like this. Please, let us escort you to the lounge." "They said it like it was a privilege," Leo recounted, "but it felt like a warning. He sat in a glass-walled room for over an hour with no phone signal, just soft jazz playing and a bartender who never spoke. Eventually, a car did arrive, and he was allowed to leave. "I never told anyone," he admitted, "because I didn't think anyone would believe me, but now that I see what's coming out, I have to." The judge nodded solemnly, and Diddy's legal team scribbled notes furiously. What DiCaprio saw wasn't a party, it was a machine, and the people inside were its moving parts. After revealing what he saw behind the velvet curtain, DiCaprio was asked how Diddy reacted to his presence that night. That's when it really got strange. Leo answered, "Because as I was about to leave that back area, Diddy saw me just for a second, and I swear he looked at me like I knew too much." The actor described an intense stare. It wasn't anger, it wasn't even surprise. It was something more calculated, like he was filing me away in his mind. Leonardo admitted he hadn't realized the weight of that moment until later, when people he knew distanced themselves, when film projects stalled, and when calls went unanswered. It was like something invisible pushed me out of certain rooms. He said quietly, but deliberately, he began seeing people from that party again in passing at galas and award shows, and they'd give me this strange look like we'd all been marked. Leo said he started having nightmares about that house. He tried to write it off, rationalize it, maybe it was just a weird Hollywood thing, he told himself. But then I saw the allegations, Cassie's story, the videos, the disappearances. It was around that time he got an anonymous call. They knew I was at the party. The caller said, "You saw more than you should have." Let it die, Leo. Then they hung up. He never told anyone, not his publicist, not his agent, not even his closest friends. Until now. The courtroom sat in stunned silence. The prosecution asked him one final question. Why come forward now? DiCaprio looked directly at Diddy and answered, "Because no one's too big to fall, not even you." And with that, one of Hollywood's biggest stars just helped tear down one of the music industry's most powerful and most feared men. With the courtroom now fixated on Leonardo DiCaprio's every word, the prosecution shifted their focus. They asked Leo a question that made his hands visibly shake on the stand. "Did anyone ever tell you what was going on behind those closed doors?" DiCaprio nodded slowly. "I didn't want to know," he said, "but someone told me anyway." According to his testimony, a fellow actor whose name was not disclosed in court for safety reasons pulled him aside days after the party. The actor said, "You were lucky you left early. There are things going on at those parties that go way beyond drugs or alcohol. It's about control, blackmail, and lists." Leo looked visibly disturbed, recounting the moment. "He told me there was a list, a real one, of everyone who had ever been filmed or compromised inside that mansion. It was used to make sure people stayed quiet, stayed obedient, and stayed connected to Diddy." The courtroom gasped. He said it was how favors were traded, not in money, in silence. Leo revealed that after this conversation, he began to notice how many people he knew were somehow tied to Diddy. Producers, directors, influencers, people who normally wouldn't even move in the same circles were suddenly backing his projects, showing up to his events, smiling like everything was normal. But the most chilling part came when Leo described the architecture of Diddy's mansion. "I found out the place had been renovated, not to expand it, but to divide it, to make hidden rooms, camera control centers, and places no one ever talked about." He referenced blueprints he'd seen shared among a group chat of concerned industry insiders, as he called them. He didn't show the blueprints in court, but the prosecution confirmed their intention to introduce evidence matching Leo's claims. According to DiCaprio, the real purpose of the parties wasn't social, it was surveillance. They wanted to see how far people would go when they thought no one would find out, he said. But someone always found out. As Leo finished describing the list and the hidden infrastructure of the mansion, the judge called for a 15-minute recess. Diddy sat quietly at the defense table, jaw clenched. But for the first time, he didn't look powerful, he looked exposed. After the break, court resumed. The prosecutor stood and asked DiCaprio a question that immediately shifted the room's energy. "Mr. DiCaprio, did you ever interact with anyone you believed was being held there against their will?" Leo hesitated, then he nodded. "I was looking for a bathroom," he said, eyes narrowing. "I wandered further than I was supposed to. I opened a door and started down a staircase, and I heard crying." He described the hallway below the main floor, narrow, dim, lined with storage doors. At the very end was a small room with a tinted glass panel. "I saw a girl inside. She was sitting on the floor, knees to her chest, crying." Leo said she looked no older than 18. "I opened the door, a crack, and I asked if she was okay. She looked up, panicked, and shook her head. Then a man appeared behind me. Security. He grabbed the door, slammed it shut, and told me I wasn't allowed down there." Leo recalled the man's exact words. "Wrong floor, Mr. DiCaprio. You didn't see nothing. Go back upstairs." He tried to report it later, but as he told the court, no one would touch it. No studio, no media outlet, not even my own team. He described weeks of emotional turmoil after that moment. He had flashbacks. He couldn't focus on his work. He avoided public events for almost a year. I became obsessed with finding out who she was, he said, but it was like she didn't exist. No records, no press, nothing. That's when Leo knew there was something much bigger at play. Someone had the power to erase people, he said solemnly. And if they could do that, they could do anything. When asked if he believed Diddy was aware of the basement, Leo replied, it wasn't just his house, it was his design. Nothing happened there without his approval. The jury was frozen. DiCaprio was no longer just a witness. He was becoming the voice of dozens, maybe hundreds, who never had the chance to speak. The final testimony of the day took an unexpected turn when the prosecution asked DiCaprio, do you recognize the term lighthouse in relation to Diddy's events? The room fell silent. DiCaprio nodded. That was the code name, he said. Everyone who went to those parties knew what it meant. It was a term passed quietly only among those who were invited to the deepest levels of his inner circle. He described how the term came up one night in a private conversation with a high-level music executive. He told me, you've been to the lighthouse. You know what it means now. I didn't say anything, but I knew he was right. When asked why it was called that, DiCaprio said, because you could see everything from inside it, and once you saw it, you couldn't go back. But then came the part no one expected. Leo was asked if he'd ever seen Diddy interacting with any high-level political figures at these events. He took a breath, then said, Barack Obama. The courtroom exploded in gasps. He clarified, I never saw Obama at the mansion, but I saw him interact with Diddy at campaign events, fundraisers, private after parties, and at least once I saw Diddy hand something to someone in Obama's circle, an envelope. It was discreet, but it wasn't nothing. He said he didn't believe Obama was directly involved in any wrongdoing, but added, it's hard to believe someone that powerful didn't hear the whispers. Leo recalled a moment at an event in 2016 when someone joked, don't let Diddy bring the lighthouse to DC, and everyone laughed except Obama, who reportedly just smiled, then quickly walked away. I don't think Obama ever went to the mansion, Leo clarified, but I think he knew, and if he didn't know, he didn't want to know. The implications were damning, not just for Diddy, but for the networks around him. And this wasn't over yet. The prosecutor asked DiCaprio why he never came forward sooner. The room leaned in as he inhaled sharply. Because I was scared, he said. Not just for my career, for my life. After that night in the mansion, the girl in the basement, the threats, the lighthouse whispers. Leo said he went home and didn't speak to anyone for days. I didn't sleep, I kept the lights on. I had security sweep my house for bugs. You think I'm being paranoid? Let me tell you something. Paranoia is a survival tool in Hollywood. He admitted that in the years that followed, he tried several times to alert people in power. I had dinner with a studio head. I said, there's something dark happening behind the scenes. Someone's going to get hurt if we don't do something. He looked me dead in the eye and said, you want to be in The Revenant or not? According to Leo, every time he tried to speak out, even in subtle ways, it was met with silence, warnings, or veiled threats. One producer reportedly told him, you say the wrong thing about Diddy and you'll be uninsurable overnight. They'll cancel you and you won't even know who did it. What pushed him to the edge, however, was an incident in 2021. I was on a yacht in Capri, he said, just a few close friends. I thought someone brought up the lighthouse again. They said, it's back. He's starting again. That night, Leo excused himself and walked to the edge of the yacht, thinking about jumping. I had spent years pretending nothing happened, smiling on red carpets, accepting awards, all while knowing that somewhere someone was still trapped, still being hurt. Because I didn't say anything, he didn't jump, but he made a vow. I decided if the day ever came when this man had to answer for what he'd done, I'd testify no matter what it cost me. The courtroom sat in stunned silence. Diddy shifted uncomfortably at the defense table, whispering to his lawyer, but it was too late. Leonardo DiCaprio was no longer a Hollywood star. He was a whistleblower, and he wasn't done yet. The prosecution then produced a sealed manila envelope. DiCaprio's face changed the moment he saw it. Is that the file? He asked quietly. The attorney nodded. Leo explained, this file contains messages, screenshots, notes. I collected them over the years from people who reached out to me anonymously, from those who were there, from victims. He was never supposed to have the file. According to his testimony, it was handed to him in 2019 by a former assistant to a powerful record executive. She was shaking when she gave it to me. She said, if I disappear, give this to someone who can't be silenced. I asked her, why me? She said, because you still still have a soul. The file, as described in court, included transcripts of parties, security logs, and names of underage individuals who had allegedly been seen entering Diddy's estate and never leaving publicly. Leo refused to say most of their names out loud. They deserve privacy. Some are still trying to live their lives. Some are still too scared to talk, but one person reached out directly. Her name was redacted in court, but DiCaprio called her Hope. She had been trafficked through connections in the entertainment industry and claimed she'd spent 3 months in Diddy's circle before escaping through what she called a favor from a guilty friend. Leo read one of her messages aloud. "If anyone ever learns what he did to us, they'll bury him, but they'll bury us too. I just want someone to say out loud what happened, even if no one believes it." DiCaprio then looked directly at the judge and said, "That's why I'm here." He finished the segment of his testimony by saying he believed Did's empire was built not just on music, but on fear, silence, and shame. The man can dance, he said, but it's the shadows that move with him. You need to watch. The judge called for another short recess, but the courtroom didn't move. No one spoke, not even the defense. As the jury returned, it became evident that something had shifted in the room. Diddy had grown visibly pale. His team shuffled papers, and one attorney whispered furiously into his ear. Diddy slammed a fist onto the table, then stood up. With the judge's approval, Diddy's attorney requested to approach the bench. A brief sidebar ensued. No one knows what was said, but when the attorneys returned to their seats, the prosecution stood and asked Leonardo for one final statement. Leo cleared his throat. "I'm not here because I hate Shaw Combs. I'm here because I believe in accountability. I believe in light." He paused. "This trial isn't about fame. It's not about Hollywood. It's about a system that let one man do anything he wanted for decades because he was rich, connected, and dangerous. It's about the people he hurt while the rest of us looked away." Then Leonardo turned directly to Diddy. "You once told me the only thing people care about is the party. Well, the party's over. And now it's time to clean up the mess." The room went still. Diddy muttered something under his breath, something caught by a courtroom microphone. He said, "This ain't over. None of this is real. They're all actors." To which Leo replied softly, "Then you finally understand what it's like to be in one of my movies. Only this time, you don't get a script." The judge adjourned court for the day. Reporters rushed out. The jury sat frozen. And Diddy, for the first time in a long time, looked powerless. As Leonardo DiCaprio exited the courtroom under police escort, he passed a small crowd of onlookers. Some applauded, some just watched in disbelief, but everyone, whether they believed him or not, knew one thing: the trial had changed. And so,